Okay. Good afternoon, members. Well, good afternoon to everybody. I'm officer team here in the chamber, the members here in the chamber. Those of you who have joined us online again, very welcome. I know obviously some representatives and agents, etc., had come on yesterday to address the final two applications that we will be considering here today. Apologies that we didn't get to them yesterday. The protocol does dictate and demand that meetings have to end in and around the 6 o'clock mark. So at roughly 5:45 yesterday, it was very evident that we couldn't take another application. So apologies to those of you who were hoping and expecting to address the committee. However, we're here today, and so we're back to where we were. So without further ado, just to work our way through the housekeeping elements of the agenda, and I'll ask the head of planning to address numbers 1 and number 2, notice and summons a meeting and members' attendance, and apologies.
Thank you, Chair. Members are hereby summoned to attend the reconvened meeting of the Planning Committee, which will be a hybrid meeting to be conducted remotely via WebEx and also physically in the Chamber, Guildhall, Derry, on the Thursday, the 3rd of November. Alderman Alan Breslin.
Here, Myra.
Thank you, Alan. Alderman Keith Kerrigan. Alderman Keith Kerrigan's downstairs, so he might join us. Alderman Drew Thompson.
Here, Myra.
Thank you. Councillor Jason Barr.
Here, Myra.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr.
Here, Myra.
Thank you. Councillor John Boyle.
Yes.
Councillor Angela Dobbins is on her, not sure. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
And Shaw.
There's Keith. It's Keith Kerrigan. It's just arrived in the chamber. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
Shaw.
Okay. Councillor Dan Kelly. Councillor Kelly.
Is it on there? Is it on?
Shaw, Myra.
Thank you. Councillor Patricia Logue. We have apologies for the first order.
Patricia's declared an interest in the first item.
First item.
She'll be join us later.
Councillor Kieran Maguire. Councillor Maguire. No. Councillor Philip McKinney.
We will be late.
Councillor McKinney will be late too. And Councillor Sean Mooney.
Here.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks. Okay, members, just again, that element of housekeeping that we must do, the broadcast statement. So I would like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the Guildhall or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The broadcast may be terminated or indeed suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purposes of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are of course reminded to only have your microphones and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the council privacy notice can be found on the council website. Members, to item 4, any further declarations of interest in relation to the business of today's meeting? Obviously, we note that Councillor Logue declared an interest in the next item, and so Councillor Logue will be joining us after we've heard that particular item. There isn't any chairperson's business that I'm aware of, Maura, no? And we will move directly onwards to the next item on the agenda, which is, of course, to hear the next planning application. Just as a reminder, we only have 2 further planning applications. I say only. That's always a risk when you use the word only. We do have 2 further planning applications to consider here today, and those are applications number 4 and number 6 in your pack. And we will move directly to number 4, And the officer presenting number 4, as I'm given to understand it, is Malachy. Is that correct, Malachy? Yes, thank you. And of course, members, as directed yesterday, there are a number of late items that were submitted over the last couple of days in relation to item number 4. So just having a look at it here, and I think we could perhaps take about 10 minutes now to review those late items, and then we will get cracking with the report from Malachy. So, say roughly about 2:15, and then we'll get to the first application of the day. Thank you. Okay, members, that's about 10 minutes or so. If you're all content to proceed, we'll get the ball rolling. Next item number 4, LA 11 2020 0105F. A demolition of buildings on site, construction of retail units, hot food unit, petrol station, etc. Officer presenting is Malachy. So Malachy, take it away, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Item 4 is LA 11 2020 0105. It's a full plan application for the demolition of all buildings on site and construction of 2 retail units and 1 hot food unit, petrol filling station, ATM, bulk fuels and associated access, parking, site works and landscaping. And the proposal is located at a property known as Ashcroft House 24 Belt Road, and the recommendation of officers is to approve subject to condition. The application site is set out here in the OS map, is located on the Belt Road. It's located in an existing residential area to the north of the recently developed Birch Hill development. To the northeast of the site lies Ashcroft, and to the north we have Ashcroft Court, and to the northwest and across the road we have the edge of the Galvin Industrial Park. This is an outline of the site as it stands. The existing property on site is an attached dwelling with some outbuildings, with landscaping enclosing it on all sides, as I say, and it's just adjacent to the recently developed Birch Hill. In terms of context of the site in relation to the area plan, the site is located here in red. The red arrow pointing down is this white land, just outside the housing zone known as H22, and to the northeast of H21. H21 has been developed a number of years ago, is known as Ashthorpe. H22 has been partially developed in terms of Ashcroft and Birch Hill, and there's a substantial part of H22 yet to be developed, mostly in the southern section here. And you'll see in yellow the nearest local centre, known as a Trench Road as well, which will come up in discussion later on. The block plan is proposed by the applicant is set out here before you. The orange area is the proposed retail unit, with a small retail unit in blue and the hot food unit in pink. There'll be a new forecourt. As I say, it's a different location from the existing buildings. It's moved further south into the site. And here's an image of the elevations and floor plans of the proposed development, and some of the boundary treatments, as well as some of the details of the bulk storage and gates and canopies, etc., associated with the petrol filling station. And this image here shows a plan with the cross sections showing the relationship between the application site and neighbouring properties at Birch Hill and Belt Road. And this is the landscape plan, which was submitted as part of the application as well. You'll not be able to pick up the detail from the image on the presentation, but there's a schedule of trees proposed to be planted along the boundaries in the top left-hand corner. And those are mainly proposed along the boundaries adjacent to residential properties. This is an image of the site as viewed from the Belt Road. You'll see the existing residential access to 24 Belt Road, and you'll see the setback from there's a verge in front of the site, a green verge before the public footpath. And there's a significant level of vegetation on all sides when viewing the site. And this is a photograph taken internally just to give you an idea of the building that's been replaced. The attached image is a photograph which would have been in your pack as well. It shows you the context of the site in relation to the neighbouring residential property at 1 Birch Hill. So the application site is behind this landscape area. This landscape area would be an existing site as it stands. And this is the property known as 22 Belt Road, and shows the existing boundary, which you may pick up there. There's a timber wrench fence beneath the hedge. That is the boundary between the properties as it stands, with the landscaping as existing. So the policy context is set out in the case officer report. Of relevance is the area plan, SPPS, PPS2, PPS3, PPS15. And we've also taken account of some supplementary guidance also. Initially, when the papers were submitted to committee, there was 191 objections from 95 local addresses, 5 addresses in the wider city and 15 with no address. As you're aware from the lead items, we've received a number of further objections, which I believe takes up to 196. There's the issues raised by the representations are summarised in bullet point form here on the presentation, and are detailed in the report, and our consideration of those representations is set out in the report. In terms of the consultee, we've had extensive consultation with statutory and non-statutory bodies, including DFI, Rivers, Roads, NA Water, Environmental Health, Shared Environmental Services, Locks Agency, Water Management Unit, Land, Sand and Oil and Air, and Natural Environment Division. You'll note from the report there are no objections from any of the consultees, and they're satisfied subject to imposition of appropriate conditions. So there's a number of policy considerations set out in the report. I'm just going to quickly go through it here in summary. In terms of the retail policy, officers have to take into account and arrive at the recommendation, the SPPS, in terms of the thrust and direction of retail policy. So there's a focus on securing town centre first approach and sequential approach, but also of particular relevance to this application, the plan-led system, is that there is a reference within the area plan to the consideration of local scale shopping in residential areas, which we think is relevant to this particular application. So column 3 of the Derry area plan states that local scale shopping within residential areas will normally be acceptable where there's clear deficiency in provision and where the site is acceptable in terms of environmental and traffic considerations. And the SBPS also advises its decision making where there's not an up-to-date plan in terms of identifying centres, that the applicant must prepare an assessment of need which is appropriate to support their application. The applicant has submitted an assessment of need with this particular application. So in terms of context, in this particular site, the site is located within the development limits. It's outside any centre and would be considered an out-of-town location. There's relevant planning history in relation to this application. There was an outline approval for H22 or the Birch Hill development approved by committee under A 2011-0013 outline in February 2016. Part of this outline approval was for the provision of a mixed-use retail area in the approximate location of the proposed development. This was referenced in terms of the approved plans and the applications, the approved plans 20 and 24, and also in conditions 41, 42 of that approval, where there was conditions in relation to the extent of the floor splits and the type of retail mix acceptable at the location. The subsequent reserve matters application did not include the application site within the red line, and therefore the mixed-use retail area, as granted by outline, was not enacted as part of the Birch Hill application. Officers considered that although the fallback position of retail is not alive on the application, the plan history is acknowledged as an important material consideration when taking into account the acceptability of retail development at this location. So the applicant submitted a assessment of need along with his application. Again, the detail that's set out in the report. So in summary, the assessment need looked at a number of matters, including the planning history, which I've referred to under the outline application. In particular, they've drawn out the review that the proposal is less than what was approved under the outline application. That they also looked at the nature of the development in terms of the uses. They've also submitted evidence relating to the expanded nature of the local area, in particular the recent development of Birch Hill and the remaining potential for H2. They've submitted evidence. They demonstrated nearby local retailers are overtrading. They've submitted a quantitative retail capacity and a report reporting that retail spending exists in the area. And they have put forward the argument that no policy issues relating to petrol filling stations exist within residential areas, and that there are many such examples approved within our urban areas. So in terms of our assessment of the retail impact, again, the Derry Area Plan gives specific guidance to local scale shopping. This relates to the deficiency of provision. We note that the site is located within an established residential area comprising a mixture of longer established developments along the Belt Road and Lissamore. Is also within the walking distance of a number of zoned housing areas as outlined in the Derry Area Plan, including the already developed H21 known as Ashthorpe and H22, which has been partly implemented in the form of Ashcroft and Birch Hill. There remains a significant portion of H22 to be developed. I think the figures under the A 2011 outline approval was that they envisaged 222 units on the Birch Hill site. The reserve matters was for 219. There was a concept master plan that looked at the potential yield within the remainder of H22, which was approximately another 172 units. So, and not counting Ashcroft, that's around 400 units, new units established under H22. The nearest local scale shopping is located at Trench Road, which serves a wide area. These are examples of smaller scale local shopping in the wider context of Trench Road catchment. These are generally located to the north and not in areas convenient to the areas that the development seeks to serve. Which acknowledged that the outline approval no longer applies. The principle of retail development was found to be acceptable at this location. The level of retail approved was in excess of what is proposed in this development. It is considered that the level of retail proposed is quite modest and is unlikely to have a significant negative retail impact on any existing centres. There's no evidence to suggest that the proposal will undermine the vitality of the commercial core or district centres or local centres. And I think significant width can be justified in terms of deficiency on the basis of the new developments as identified in the Derry Area Plan, H21 and H22. In terms of residential amenity, there's a number of factors to take into consideration for such a development. These include noise. The applicant has submitted a noise impact assessment. We've consulted the relevant body, Environmental Health. They've reviewed assessment and subject to strict adherence with conditions proposed, they're satisfied that the development can go ahead without any adverse impact. They've also recommended conditions in relation to opening hours and some other noise emitting units within the proposed development, such as the vacuum and air water units. So As you'll note from the report, we have suggested some amendments to the opening hours, as well also in terms of the conditioning. We've also considered deliveries. The applicant submitted a service management plan in support of the application. In the case, there'll be a wide range of types of deliveries, from large HGV food deliveries from smaller vans, and also from fuel tankers. It's given us an idea of the frequency and when they'll arrive at the location to service it. So they've envisaged certain times. EHD have recommended hours which officers accept as limited conditioned hours in terms of acceptable times for deliveries, which will be between 7:30 and 11, Monday to Sunday. The applicant has submitted an odour impact assessment. The applicant consultants, they've made recommendations on the type of odour abatement system that they would like installed and the level of maintenance that shall be appropriate. As usual with these sort of proposals for odour abatement systems, the detailed information isn't submitted at this stage. So EHD have used a standard condition requesting that the applicant has to submit finalised plans detailing the odour abatement technologies to be employed, the extraction system design, and the extraction point location, height and discharge velocity for written approval. In terms of lighting, a photometric light report was submitted in support of the application. EHD have viewed this and have advised that the light levels are within the recommended levels in terms of impacting sensitive receptors. It was proposed that a coil is fitted to the two nearest light columns to number 22 Belt Road, which has been accepted by the applicant. We've also considered the impact of the proposal on residential amenity, given its close proximity to a number of properties on the boundary. As set out in the report, there's 4 or 5 properties that directly abut the boundary of the application site. So the applicant has submitted evidence in support of his application in form of his cross sections and landscaping plans, as well as the boundary treatments in terms of proposed walls, fences, and a landscape buffer zones between the proposal and existing dwellings. Officers haven't considered the proposed mitigation measures, as well as the proposed landscape buffer containing a mixture of semi-mature and non-mature trees as well as hedges, are of opinion that adequate mitigation measures have been proposed to provide screening between the site and any of the adjacent residential properties, thus avoiding any impacts in terms of privacy overlooking. And we've also considered a number of other factors in terms of the proposed site site level increases of the site, given the sloping nature of the site as it stands, and the proposed development is seeking to provide a level surface for the forecourt. There are going to be some level changes on the site. We have requested the sections with this in mind, and we've assessed that the increases are not significant, and they will not have an adverse impact on the neighbouring properties for a number of reasons. This includes just the modest scale of the increases, the separation distances, the orientations of the neighbouring properties. Therefore, we've concluded it's unlikely to be any impact on light or amenity or other amenity enjoyed by applicants as a result of the proposed development. Traffic and movement. We've consulted extensively with DFA Roads on the application. It's fair to say there's been a number of submissions in terms of plans between the applicant and DFA Roads. However, DFA Roads have considered the proposed access layout and parking as finally submitted by the applicant and are satisfied and have concluded that the application is compliance with PPS 3 subject to conditions and informatives. The applicant also submitted a supporting geological evaluation of the site, which took account of potential for bats, given the existence of an existing property on site. Natural Environment Division are content on the basis of the information received that the proposed development and surrounded habitat are of low level, and the low level of bats reported that the proposal is unlikely to have a significant impact on bats. We have also carried out our duty as a planning authority in terms of assessing the application in relation to the habitat regulations, and we have consulted with our advisors at Shared Environmental Services. The site is potentially connected to River Faughan and Tripperdees SAC through storm drainage infrastructure. However, having considered the nature, scale, timing, duration and location of the project, the appropriate assessment has concluded, provided mitigation is conditioned in any approval, the proposal will not have an adverse effect on site integrity of any European site. The applicant has submitted some evidence in relation to their economic case. The applicant has advised that the scheme represents an investment of over £3 million, will result in long-term job creation, support local suppliers, construction sector, and increase rates income. You'll note from your packet also we've received a number of late items. We've one letter from elected representative, and there's three, I think there's maybe four, since I wrote this, it might have been 4 or 5 letters from the public also. A number of issues relating to raw sewage, drainage and flooding have been raised that were not considered in the report. However, I can advise members that the application was accompanied by a drainage assessment. And the findings of this drainage assessment were found to be acceptable by the Rivers Agency. Therefore, the proposal is in compliance with PPS 15. And also, we consulted NI Water, who had advised that the applicant has capacity was available to connect to public water supply, public foul sewer, and public surface sewer. And I just note that some of the issues relating to drainage are pertaining to a separate site and separate application, and not to this application site. So, in conclusion, the recommendation of officers is that all material plan considerations have been taken into account, including planning history, policy, consultation responses, and third-party representations. It has been concluded that the proposal meets the policy requirements of the Dairy Area Plan, the SPPS, PPS 3, PPS 2, and PPS 15. All consultees are content, subject to condition. Third-party representations have been considered, and on balance, it has been determined that the issues raised could not be sustained when considered against the planning history, the mitigation measures proposed, the responses to consultees, and the compatibility of the proposal of planning policy. And therefore, our recommendation is to approve the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malachy. Detailed and concise at the same time, and very much appreciated. Members, there's a few speakers to address you this afternoon. The first of whom is Mr. Patrick McShane, who is an objector to this development. So, Mr. McShane, I'm working on the assumption that you're online here. I can't see you in the chat box, but you're very welcome to the meeting. The normal run of things here is that we afford you 5 minutes or so to address the committee with your concerns in relation to this application. And of course, I can give a little bit of leeway if I feel it is appropriate. However, we'll run with, if you can, fitting your objection into 5 minutes. So I now invite you to address the committee. This is Mr. Patrick McShane. Members, go ahead, Patrick.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay there?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Patrick McShane, and thank you for giving me a few minutes to speak in objection to this application. I'm a resident in Birch Hill, and whenever we bought our property in 2018, there was no mention whatsoever about petrol station or shops or anything being built in the area. I, like a lot of residents in Birch Hill and Belt Road, have come to that area because it is a residential area, a completely residential area. I know the planners were talking about an industrial estate to the north in the Trench Road, but I'm sure if anybody has been out along the Belt Road or up around Birch Hill or Ashcroft, you will know that you can't physically see this industrial complex. It's well completely surrounded by trees, and you wouldn't know that you're there. I think if they were going to build a petrol station, you can't cover that by trees, and it's going to be out of character with the area. And despite what the planners say, I and a lot of the residents in Birch Hill and Ashcroft and along the Belt Road would agree that this a big, massive petrol station, or not massive, but a big petrol station development with huge lights. I worked in a petrol station in my younger years. I know the lights on the forecourt is going to be completely out of character with the rest of the area there. Looking around the waterside area, I can't see any other petrol stations built so close to residential property. Now, when we were talking about the assessment of need, the applicants had said there was a clear deficiency in the area. And looking through the document there, I know there was other documents that were submitted, but a lot of what's said in the final planning document is opinion. It is of our opinion that there is an assessment of need, and it's taking into consideration local shops and convenience stores. There's a local shop on the Trench Road, there's one in Church Bray, there's one in Ross Downey. These are all, Trench Road is walking distance. Church Bray and Ross Downey, yes, slightly more walking, but we also have the big stores in Ross Downey and Lisnagelvin of Frank Long's supermarket. We have Tesco's, and you know, we're facing an economic crisis here. People aren't going to be going to small convenience stores spending, they're much more expensive. They're going to be going to the bigger stores where they can. So I disagree with the retail impact assessment. I also disagree with opening another takeaway. Again, there's takeaways in Ross Downey, in Trench Road, Church Bray, and Lisnagelvin. You know, there's no need for another takeaway in the area. You know, the City Council has signed up to the healthy, the obesity plan, or the Healthy Cities initiative there, you know, and we shouldn't be promoting fast food takeaways. We should be trying to get away from this. Again, going to the need for a petrol station. There's a petrol station in Lisnagelvin, there's one in Ross Downey, there's one in Crescent Link, there's one in Drumahoe, another one to open in Drumahoe, from what I believe as well, the new development. You know, the City Council has their climate change adaptation plan in it, and you specifically say in it that they're encouraging a modal shift away from the use of private car to alternative modes of transport. You know, we're getting into this green policy where we're not supposed to be using cars as much, and actually a lot of us moved into the area convenient to walk to work, where we didn't need to use cars. So I think building another petrol station, just from the idea of it, is horrendous. In the development, the developers also want to put a solid fuel facilities in it. The 220 or whatever houses in Birch Hill cannot use solid fuel. You know, we don't have fires. We don't have chimneys. What are we doing with a solid fuel depot right next to us? I think there's issues here that haven't been considered with regards to people's health. Putting in a petrol station, big lorries and all that, they're coming in around the area. There's an asthmatic child, premature baby. He's now 16 months old. His twin has died, living right behind where this petrol station forecourt's going to be. I've actually got the meters here from it. 4 meters from the back of a petrol station and a forecourt. An asthmatic child who comes to hospital frequently needs antibiotics all the time. You know, we're looking 2020 here. A case reopened in England where a 9-year-old girl, where the coroner actually said her death in 2013 was contributed by fumes from a road where she was 30 meters away from. We're asking people here to put a forecourt, all these fumes and all, 4 meters away from somebody's house with a child in there that has got horrendous lungs, has got I think it's just madness. Sorry, it really.
Excuse me,
Sure.
Mr. McShane, that's your 5 minutes up now.
Okay, I just there was other things about the bat
Patrick,
assessment.
Patrick, I'll afford you one more minute if you want to just wrap up, okay?
Yeah, there's a thing about the bat assessment was done in 2019. They didn't go inside the house due to the COVID things in 2020, and it was only valid for a year. I see bats out there all the time. There are lighting issues. On the Birch Hill plan, it had to be low-level lighting at all times. Now, in a petrol forecourt, that is not possible. So we're going to have a lot more lighting. I just think, and everyone that I've talked to in the area, I haven't had any support for it. I think it's a bad idea, and would ask you to reject it. I'm sorry. Thank you for taking time to listen to me.
You're okay. Thanks, Patrick. And thanks for addressing the committee. And I thank you for your patience in relation to the long wait that you've had over the last couple of days. But fair play to you, you stuck with it. Of course, some of what you've outlined there are in the objections that are presented in the report in front of members as well. But of course, you have introduced some other thoughts for people to consider too. So, members. Opportunity now to put questions to Patrick. So should any of you wish to do so? Okay, Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Patrick for coming on and listening intently to what you've said. And I live on the waterside, and I know the area well. But I do take on board, and I've read the pack and I've listened to you intently, and I do understand where you're coming from, especially because when I look at this application, I look at it on the basis: is there a need for it? You know, really, that's the nub of the question. And what you've interestingly said was that in that area, if you left your house, would I be correct in saying that within less than 5 minutes of a drive, you could arrive at 5 filling stations, which 4 probably would have shops and convenience stores like that, namely from Glendermot Road right down to Drummerhoe. And on that basis, I mean, do you think yourself there's a need for that site or that location to be used as a petrol station? Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Councillor Mooney. Go ahead, Patrick.
Oh yeah, I don't. I frequently pass Ross Downey, the new petrol station at Ross Downey, coming over the town. I've yet to see a lot of cars in there filling petrol. Every time I go past, there's nobody actually at the petrol pumps there. So, and again, we're in a cost of living crisis here at the minute. We keep saying a lot of people are going to Tesco's because the fuel's cheaper there. There's a busier petrol station. Craig's and the Crescent Link, passing that, yes, it is a little bit busier, but yeah, I can get a petrol station within 3 to 4 minutes of leaving my house. So I don't see the need for a petrol station on the Belt Road.
Okay, Councillor Mooney? No other questions? No. Any other members have any questions for Patrick? Not. We'll move on to the next speaker. Patrick, thanks. Thanks for coming and presenting. Stick with us, obviously.
Thank you.
Members, now on behalf of the applicant, we have 2 speakers. We've got David Mount-Stephen and Harry McConnell, who are here to speak on behalf of the applicant. David and Harry, you're very, very welcome. And again, to both of you, thank you for your patience and sticking with us. As I said, we're here now. So thanks for coming along. And again, similar to any objectors speaking, you are afforded 5 minutes to address the committee. And then, of course, I do have an option but I always ask people just try and wrap it up as quickly as you can. If you can fit it in the 5 minutes, that's all the better. So, David, all right, I welcome you now to address the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me all right? Mr. Chairman,
yeah, we've got you loud and clear. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is David Mount-Stephen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm speaking on behalf of the Henderson Group in support of the recommendation to approve I'm joined by Harry McConnell of RPP Architects. I've also got Mark Adrain and Simon Moon from the Henderson Group with me, and Brendan Carey of Carey Consulting, our roads engineer. In terms of the background to and context for this application, in 2016, this committee approved the use of the site as a neighbourhood centre to serve the 400 dwellings which would be delivered on the H22 zoning and the surrounding area. 220 of those have been delivered at Birch Hill, with another 170 odd houses envisaged to come forward. The approval included for a mixed-use retail area to include up to 650 square metres of retail floor space. This obviously was assessed against and found to be in accordance with planning policy as set out in the SPPS and PPS 7, which requires that provision is made for local neighbourhood facilities. Such facilities make an important contribution in terms of the sustainability of a neighbourhood. There's been no change in the planning policy since the previous decision of this committee. The principal mixed-use retail area at the site remains compliant with planning policy. And the use of a site for a neighbourhood centre is further strengthened by the fact that since the approval, there has in fact been a continued shift in shopping patterns away from a big shop towards shopping local and little and often. The proposal was the subject of a pre-application discussion in 2018 following that approval in 2016, and the application has been the subject of a thorough assessment over the last 2 years, with detailed assessments undertaken in relation to roads, drainage, ecology, retailing, landscaping, lighting, noise and odour. All information requests from the Council have been responded to. Revised plans have been provided to ensure that all the concerns of the Council and consultees have been addressed, thereby providing a robust basis for approval. There were 55 objections to the original outline application on these lands. Nonetheless, the Council approved that application because that was the right decision to make when the proposal was considered against material planning considerations. Similarly, the proposal before you today has been thoroughly assessed by your professional officers against all material planning considerations. All the issues raised by the objectors, including the relationship of the proposal to the 5 properties which share a boundary with the site, have been carefully considered and summarised in the case officer's report. In terms of the issue of drainage from the site, raised in a couple of the late items received by the Council, as noted, Northern Ireland Water and Rivers Agency have no objections. The foul and storm sewer connections go out from our development onto Belt Road, and we understand these go along Belt Road, down Church Brae and under the A6. They don't go down through Birch Hill, so they're not upstream of the Church Road Ivy Mead area and won't add to any existing issue at that location. Ultimately, there are no objections from any statutory consultees. The scheme will deliver a range of economic and other benefits. It's an investment of £3 million in the city by the Henderson Group. It will create 30 to 35 jobs and provide an additional £60,000 per year in rates income. It will support the construction sector and local suppliers, and furthermore, Henderson Group shops become part of the community in which they're located. Each store has a community champion, and they support a wide range of charitable causes throughout the year. We commend the scheme to you for approval. I'll hand over to Harry.
Good afternoon, councillors. My name is Harry McConnell from RPP Architects, and we were the architects for the scheme in front of you today. We're obviously very pleased by the Planning Officer's recommendation to approve the application after what has been a very thorough and exhaustive planning process, and I think that's ably demonstrated by your case officer's report today. As David has mentioned, the scheme has evolved from the original planning submission in response to a number of points that were raised during the application process, and we believe the final scheme design has actually benefited greatly from this process. You'll note from the artist's impressions, which accompanied the application, that while the scheme is undoubtedly a Henderson's Eurospar development, it's not a cookie-cutter proposal, not a standardised box, but rather a specific design response to this particularly sensitive site, and has been designed to address the particular location and the context of the development. We believe that this Henderson site-specific design, which falls in line with their community approach, can be demonstrated actually by the recently completed Henderson Eurospar development at Rossdowney Road and the Limavady Road. This site allowed a much more visually impactful development, which is obviously larger and is orientated directly towards the Limavady Road. The application was approved by the committee approximately 3 years ago now, and has obviously been open for about 18 months. In contrast, the scheme proposed today is obviously much smaller, it's much lower in height, and incorporates pitched roof forms and stone gable elevations, which are much more in keeping with the local adjoining residential developments. In actual fact, it's significantly lower, both the canopy and the building itself, than the existing property on the site. The building form itself, as you'll see, it's orientated almost perpendicular away from the Belt Road to reduce the visual impact of the building profile when viewed from the Belt Road. And it actually opens up the views from the Belt Road across the landscape beyond because of the change in levels. The site, we believe that this flexible site-specific design approach, which has been successfully implemented in a number of Henderson's developments in equally sensitive locations, and it's been very successful, and as part of their ongoing investment and upgrading program for their local retail centres. The access to the
Excuse
site.
me, Mr. McConnell, that's the 5 minute speaking rights up now.
All right, I'll give you 1 minute to wrap it up.
It's no problem, Chair. We just want to mention, obviously, the access to the site itself has been improved in accordance with the DFI road guidance. It's been relocated, it's been widened, the visibility displays have been increased, and a right turning lane has also been provided. Just like to thank you for the opportunity of speaking to you today, but we'd also be happy to answer directly any questions from the committee in relation to the development. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Harry. So members, opportunity here now to put any questions that you have to the agents who are acting on behalf of the applicant here. So anybody got any questions? Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose this particular question directed towards Harry, because and I just want to take this opportunity to welcome you to the committee. Harry, you referenced that this is a particular sensitive site. Now, the sensitivities, obviously, because I know the site very well. I live not too far away, and I pass it on a daily basis. And it is an established residential. It's an area of established residential character. There's no doubt about that. And when you're making reference that this is a particular sensitive site, then I'm assuming that you're referencing the residential character of the area, and the site itself is in a very prominent location. I can't, I can't, by looking at the images that have been provided, see how that character has been. There was any attempt to protect the character of that residential area, and picking up on some of the comments from the objectors around the need for a petrol filling station. Now that completely flies in the face of the respecting this particular sensitive site. So I just wouldn't mind, from an architect's point of view, what attempts have been made to try and protect the character of the area, and from an architectural point of view, has there been any successful petrol filling stations that have integrated well into the local area? Because I certainly can't think of one. A petrol filling station, by its nature, doesn't lend itself well to a residential area. So I just wouldn't. I'm trying to figure out the logic around the statement that attempts were made from a design perspective. They incorporate and accommodate this application in this prominent location. So I just wouldn't mind a wee bit of clarity in relation to that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. All right, David, whoever feels appropriate to address those questions for Councillor Jackson, go ahead.
Councillor Jackson, thanks for the question. I think it's obvious the site is particularly sensitive, and I think it would be disingenuous to say that it's not. It's in a prominent location, and it's within an established residential community, and designing, we try and address those. When I say particularly sensitive, I probably refer to the fact that my parents live in Ashthorpe, which is about 200 yards from this particular site. So obviously I know the site very well myself, and my sister also lives in the area. I'm not sure they were in the report that went on online, but we obviously submitted a number of CGIs within the documentation and the design and access statement that we provided as part of the scheme. And I'd maybe use, if you don't mind, a comparison perhaps with Ross Downey Road, which I know has been mentioned a couple of times and mentioned also by the objector. So this particular scheme primarily is a pitched roof. So it's a single-story building with a pitched roof, and those pitched roofs are designed with the same angle and the same profile as the houses immediately adjacent. And the finish on those roofs is a tile which has actually been designed to match the tile that's in those particular houses that are adjacent, in particular within Birch Hill. We have orientated, so if you imagine in your normal context of what a petrol filling station or a retail environment is, it very much presents itself fully onto the road to maximize the signage, to maximize the visual impact of the development. That's part of the retail strategy. You'll notice in this particular development, through discussions with officers, that the building has actually been rotated almost 90 degrees away from the Belt Road. And what that has done is it's opened up so that the forecourt, etc., in the open area is the single biggest element to the Belt Road, and also it's orientated in terms of the orientation of the houses in number 1, number 3, number 5, number 7, etc. within Birch Hill. They're orientated at an angle and they're orientated towards that open space. And we've deliberately kept the building to the side of the road running down along Birch Hill. The unit itself is considerably smaller than probably would be the norm, and certainly is smaller than what was identified within the original approval that the council made. But as I say, we have designed the building so that we have gables, some of which are clad in stone, some are rendered. We have integrated a pitched roof, and the building is actually in the profile of almost like a bungalow design, so it is quite low. I'm not sure, Councillor Jackson, if you have access to the CGIs in front of you, but from those you could probably tell the design of the building and the orientation. So if you imagine onto the Belt Road, you've got a pitched roof, single-story building with a retail frontage which has been integrated into that. And then as we return 90 degrees towards the Belt Road, again, we have the retail frontage, but much lower than perhaps you would see at Ross Downey Road and others. The tone of that in terms of the colour is a very sort of muted grey. And again, we have the pitched roof that sits above that. And the actual canopy itself as well is a 5.3 metre high canopy, so below the roof line of a normal bungalow. And it's a two services 4 cars, but it's only a 2-pump petrol filling station. So it's not a petrol filling station in the size of you would be associated with a Go or a large area. This is a small 2-pump canopy, 2-pump filling station. Primarily, this is a retail offering for local shopping, and in terms of where we have been from the pandemic, and I know that was mentioned, and also in terms of the crisis in terms of income, what we're finding and what Henderson's are finding is people are shopping more often with smaller amounts. What they want to do is avoid wastage. The idea of a big shop driving to Tesco's and spending hundreds of pounds to fill a boot for 4 weeks, that's a bit of an anathema now to the majority of people. So it's a concentration on local community, local offer, and within the community, and that's very much has been the design ethos of this development.
Okay, thanks, Harry. Okay with that, Commissioner? You want to come back in? Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Harry, for that. No, just in relation, because I do have the CGI images in front of me, and it does look that in terms of the structure itself, it does look as if that there has been some attempt. They blend in with the established character of the area. It's the introduction of a canopy and a petrol filling station is almost flies in the face of any of any established residential character, and that's something from a design perspective. I can't understand why the applicant decided to go down this route. It certainly, well, I just find it very difficult given the nature of a petrol filling station. It certainly doesn't go anyway in terms of protecting residential character, and I can't think of any instances where that's the case. But in terms of the building itself, I fully accept and understand the points that you had made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Chair, would you like me to add some more comments in response to that? My client.
Sorry, who's that?
It's Mark Adrian from Henderson.
Mark, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
We could add something to that in terms of further response to what the councillor said. I mean, firstly, just in terms of this question around successful and well accepted filling stations in residential areas, just off the top of my head, looking at recent developments we have done, we have undertaken similar developments in residential areas in Lisburn, very recently in Doch, Bangor, Bashane, Larne, Belfast. Indeed, there's more opening in Hollywood. So I think we could provide multiple representations of where these type of developments can be successfully integrated into communities, and in fact are very well supported by communities. But I think it is a fair question to ask why, as a client, are Henderson's promoting a petrol filling station in what is predominantly a residential area. Certainly in our assessment, it's still a very important part of the customer proposition. It's services that customers do still seem to have a demand for, and we expect that to continue over coming years. Having said that, we are mindful of the residential character. Therefore, the petrol filling station is quite modest in size compared to others that are mentioned in the area. And they'll also be built to the most modern environmental standards. So some of the other filling stations in the area will come under pressure to be sustainable in the long term to the investment they'll need to do to protect environmental standards. But also, I'm sure the question around, the environmental question was raised by the objector and by others in a time when electric vehicles are being promoted. We're very conscious of that. So hence the filling station has been modestly designed, and we would expect that over certainly the lifetime of the project that you will see a transition towards electrification and away from fuel, petrol and diesel. And our plans already would show where we expect electric vehicles to be parked, and we'll see that changing over time. So having said that, though, it is too early now. The take up in electric vehicles is still so low that it wouldn't present that. So we're very careful around how we've designed this, and I don't want to go through the technical elements again, but I hope it comes through to members and indeed to residents that we have tried very hard to meet the highest environmental standards that we could have done, and trying to minimize any impact on the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for clearing that up for us. Okay, members, any other questions? Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the agents for coming along, and just say thank you to Councillor Jackson for raising the issue of the design and integration. But could I just go back on the question of, I suppose, the necessity for the application to be cited where it is? We've heard from the officer, we've heard from the objector as well. But again, I'm going back to the thing in my mind is saying that within a very short distance of where that location is, you can readily access 5 filling stations. With, I think 4 of them have convenience stores there. And if you look at the analysis as well, as you have in that close to that area, you have the Spar and Trench Road, Spar and Church Bray. Even on further in Drumahoe, you have an Orbs bar in the filling station down there. You have a Vivo store in Strabano Road and a shop next to Annie's Bar as well. You then have Lisnagelvin Tesco's in a very short distance from there, and you've got Frank Long's next to that as well. So, I mean, there's a multitude of convenience stores and larger stores and filling stations on a very, very, very short drive and journey from that location. And again, I mean, what I'm asking is it credible, based on your assessment, they say that there is a need for that application to be located on that site? If anybody could address me, that would be great. Thank you, Chair.
I can come in on that, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, feel free to carry on. Yep.
Well, thank you, Councillor Mooney, for the question. I suppose the starting point is that needs a material planning policy consideration, and it was a material planning policy consideration in 2016. It's contained within the SPPS, and it would have. So the question of need was asked, assessed, answered, and approved back in 2016. The planning policy hasn't changed, and the retail context hasn't changed either, insofar as the shops mentioned at Church Bray and Trench Road and Lisnagelvin, they all existed at that time also. When the council approved 650 square metres of retail floor space at the site. Obviously that was an outline application. It had a residential element. It had a local neighbourhood centre element. Since then, the residential element has been brought forward by a residential developer, and the local neighbourhood centre element is now being brought forward by the applicant. The changes since then are supportive and actually strengthen the case that there is a need for it, as we've mentioned already. That the change in shopping habits is one of the moving towards more local and more often, and also at that time when the previous approval was granted, not the new houses at Birch Road had not been constructed. Obviously, since then they have been constructed. Therefore, there is a greater population in the catchment and a greater expenditure supporting further floor space. That said, the proposal here today that needs a material consideration in relation to retail floor space, and we actually have less retail floor space proposed in this proposal compared to what was previously approved on the site. So yes, I mean there is a case in terms of need in how it's assessed. I don't know if Mark, from a Henderson Group point of view, who obviously understand the business and the catchments and the needs, and obviously the relationship in terms of the local shops at Trench Road and at Church Bray, which are obviously Spar brands, and who have not made any objection to the proposal. It has to be noted. So I don't know if Mark wants to make any further comment on that.
Well, I suppose just in support of it, obviously David covers all the technical assessment parts of it to meet planning policy in terms of retail need. But you can imagine that the Hendersons are fortunate to be a very successful company. Has grown very strongly in recent years, and its growth has been based on providing small supermarkets near to people's homes, providing the best range of goods that we can to meet those needs. And we don't take these investments lightly. We do a very thorough exercise in terms of working out the catchment, the likely spends in those areas. We work out the impact on other stores, the impact on this store, and by sheer example of that, we are willing to invest more than £3 million in this investment shows that we have huge confidence in this. There are understandable objections to it. I know people fear change, and maybe they didn't expect this to come, but we have undertaken this in many locations, and really, I can say strongly that we haven't had any unsupported developments in that time. And through COVID and other things, we have been rewarded by our customers by trying so hard to meet their needs. And that's the only way we're going to be successful. It's not going to be doing anything against what their desires are. And, we're very serious business about it. We're very serious about community and about about how we impact on neighborhoods. So, I just feel that, we will not be doing such lightly or spending this amount of money if we weren't very confident that the need and support from the community, over time will be there. And we believe it's a great location, building on new houses. Stores are over trading in some areas. There's a modernization around what the proposition is. But we have no doubt that the demand will be proven over time.
Thank you, Mark. Members in the chamber, I have no other further questions. I have in the chat box, so I'm going to go to Councillor McKinney. Councillor McKinney, obviously I note that you were late coming through the item, so you'll of course understand that you won't be able to vote on this particular matter. However, you're still at liberty to ask questions that may well help to inform the conversation. So, Councillor McKinney, if you'd like to put your questions to the applicants.
Thank you, Chair. It's really just emphasising what Councillor Mooney said there about already filling stations in the area. 1.4 miles Maxwell Garage at Rossdowney Road, 1.5 mile Craig's Cost Cutters, 1.2 miles Tesco with a 24-hour store. So is there really a need? And also the last speaker spoke about the need to look at the impact of meeting the population needs. Well, what about the impact of the local residents that I'm sure I spoke just earlier, they aren't too keen on it, so that's what I just sort of wanted to emphasise there. And thank you very much for giving me the time to speak, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McKinney, I didn't hear any questions and really only a view from yourself. A couple of further members who have indicated they wish to ask questions. So, Councillor Paul Gallagher, I'll go to you first, Paul.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you. There was a few questions asked about needs. I'll ask one about need. To whoever cares to answer, do you think does there need £3 million development input? Do you think that the area needs 30 jobs in the area? And do you think this council needs £60,000 a year in rates? And I'll put that to the floor, because I was at a meeting this morning and I think 60 grand will go a long way.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. I think that's as much of an observation. Perhaps the gentlemen are entitled to provide the answers if they wish. Gentlemen, if you feel that deserves an answer, go ahead.
I think, well, if I can maybe speak first and then invite Mark in again, maybe. I think, yes, the expectation is established, I believe, from the outline approval that this development was going to come forward, and therefore, it was expected, intended, and is definitely needed to complete the development that the council previously approved for this area, to provide the neighbourhood services to serve the expanded population growth in the area. So yes, it is needed. I know one of the late representations referred to a handful of jobs, and I mean, 30 to 35 jobs is a significant number of jobs, a range of full and part-time posts, providing flexibility for those people who need those types of jobs. And I think it's a very important and significant investment. It's very important, which is to be welcomed, and I'm sure Mark would want to add something to that as well.
Well, I suppose I just say the information is respectfully given, just in terms of describing what we're doing. In terms of the council determining whether it's it welcomes that investment and particularly the jobs, then obviously that's a council view to take. But it's purely respectfully given in terms of recording the investment that we're making. And normally councils do welcome not just that investment, but the jobs at any time are normally welcome, and they will obviously be local jobs. All the people we employ, generally do not commute to stores. It's local communities who avail of those, given their nature. So we just respectfully put that forward in terms of we believe it's a positive for it, but obviously the council, will be the judge for that quite fairly.
Thanks, Mark. Councillor Jackson, did you indicate you wanted to ask another question? Yeah, go ahead, Christopher.
Thanks, and I suppose I'll just make a point in terms of the importance of local centres, and I think in the general Papa Hull area, it's I suppose there's no better example than the local centre at Trench Road, and the importance that is to the local community, not only in terms of providing services but providing jobs as well. So there's no doubt and there's no debate around the importance of local retail. There's, I suppose, in terms of assessing this application, you're looking at the close proximity to a very much loved, well used local retail centre on the Trench Road. And I think the point has been made by a lot of members around. There's questions in terms of the need and the necessity of a duplication, and I suppose there may be a potential of displacement of jobs. But in terms of the Henderson's Group ethos in relation to the importance of local community, and that's understandable, because local community, any retail organisation depends on the community for customers. But in relation to this application, there doesn't seem to have been much community consultation, particularly with the residents of Birch Hill, who would be most impacted by this. So I would have thought, with the company's ethos that stated the importance of the local area, then they would be engaging extensively with those that are living closest by. To my knowledge, that hasn't happened. And in terms of the insertion of a petrol filling station, that again shows little regard to the established residential area along the Belt Road. So that I just, in terms of a question, what community consultation has been had with the residents in Belt Road? And if there was no community consultation, why not? Because it makes business sense for retail to have the local community on board. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Straightforward enough question, gentlemen. I'll give you the opportunity to answer.
Yeah, I think it's a fair enough question, and on reflection, we wish we'd have the opportunity to do more consultation. If we're honest, I think we focus very hard on getting through what we assume to be a lot of technical issues around the planning and the protection of residents around all the various consultees. Then, in terms of making sure we have a well-crafted application, certainly before we start or in terms of any conditions, we're happy to undertake more work with the consulting locally. But if we're honest, it took us quite a bit of time to get here. We didn't know if we were going to get an application that was likely to be successful or not, and we're very grateful for the approval for that. But there's a very short window between getting to that point and then getting to the council meeting. But I think, again, in terms of approach, then we had our time again. We probably would try and do some more consultation. So we accept that, Councillor, and that's a very fair point.
Thanks. Thanks for your frankness, actually, as well, Mark. I think it's a well enough observed question. Mr. Kerrigan.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll be very brief because members have given it a good rattle there. In regards to that there, you've obviously seen a demand or you wouldn't have been seeking to have went with this application. So there's a demand there. It's a large residential area. There has been additional homes built in it, and there's more and more people in that area. It's not my area, say I'm Castlereagh based, but it's still the case of, and I do realise what other members are stating about the closeness of fuel facilities. I know I could go into an area in Castlereagh and I could say you're so many 100 yards from a petrol pumps there, and you're so many from that, and this one, the other one. It doesn't stop another application, which there is in the town for another, in my own town, for another service station and shop along with it and hot food facilities. So surely the like of that there, just touching on yourselves, there's a demand there, and there's a potential as well of competition when you have more of these facilities, and you do have a potential then of maybe driving down prices when you have more facilities there. So it's just touching that. You've obviously looked at that and you've seen an opportunity. So it's just touching base on that, if you can pass comment on it.
Go ahead, gentlemen.
Well, I suppose really thank the councillor, and yes, we would agree with all the sentiment to that. So that sort of support our view that, particularly over time, we will build that bond with the local community and also the wider network of customers. And as I say, we believe we've been rewarded by customers in terms of how well we've done by working very hard on a range of goods, by providing value and meeting what the local community needs are. So we wouldn't be successful without that being the case. And we do weigh up what happens in the area, and it is around driving down prices together. Which, although there's ourselves, we also own and run the store at Ross Downey. The other Spars and Eurospars in the area are obviously customers of ours. But it is all about our customers getting to know the quality of goods and the value they'll get at Eurospars and Spars. And so that works very well for us. If we weren't bringing value and strong proposition to customers, we wouldn't be able to make the investments we have done. So we're very appreciative of that, but we do work very, very hard at that. And I've no doubt that once we get into the knowing that we're going to be able to develop in the area, if that question is answered positively today, then the community will see a company that will work very hard to build community relations in it and be seen as a positive contributor. We work very hard on charitable donations, working with local food banks, other organisations in the area. We did a lot of litter picking, various things that are seen as a positive to communities. But we are aware that when we put in planning applications, that people are worried about forecourts, they're worried about hot food, they're worried about various things that can happen. But the application's been very well put together, I believe, and we've thought about all those bits. We're very experienced about how to address all those elements. We know how to manage forecourts, and we know how to keep nuisance and noise down in areas, and we know how to work with residents, because we annoy our residents, we won't do well. So we are a company that will work very hard at making this work, and if it doesn't work straight away, we'll keep working until it does. So, it's really, unfortunately, it's a bit like in new areas, the proof is in the eating, until it actually happens and you see it. Like, I'm Henderson's 15 years, and, we've been had applications in areas precisely like this that have been very hard to get planning, and now they're very successful, positive parts of the community. So it's getting to that point where we can demonstrate a wherewithal, and really it's requesting consideration of that and hopefully asking for your support for our proposal today.
Thank you, Mark. On our chat box here, sitting at, I don't know where you're sitting actually, Councillor Raymond Barr. So, Councillor Barr.
Thank you, Chairs. Just an observation, no questions here. In terms of need, I feel investment like this would be a non-starter if it was felt. It wouldn't work from a demand and supply perspective. And I'm sure a robust investigation has been carried out onto that before a decision was taken to invest £3 million. I tend to agree with Councillor Gallagher's views in terms of the economic needs. The investment is needed, the jobs are needed, and council certainly needs the revenue. Plus, I feel officers will have satisfied themselves as to the community impact before recommending approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. Gentlemen, I don't think there was actually a question for you there, really. It was more, again, an observation. And I think we've heard your views and you've presented your argument in relation to those matters already. So I don't think that requires an answer again. But I thank Councillor Barr for coming in with his own observation in relation to this. Is there anybody else wishing to put any further questions to the representatives of the applicant? If not, I'll move forward. Councillor Councillor Gallagher.
If you're done, Chair, I'm happy to make a proposal. No, okay.
Oh, sorry, Paul, we've got to go to the officer next, so I'll certainly take a proposal as and when. Have you a further question? Just waiting to see if anybody else has any further questions, and then I'll come to Councillor Jackson. That's okay. And then I'll come to you, Councillor Jackson. Okay. So, thank you, gentlemen. That's your part of the meeting. At this point, so there are no further questions to you, and obviously as well, you'll probably understand no further comment from you. So, Councillor Jackson, to the officers.
Well, thanks, Chair, and thanks to Malky for a very detailed report. And I suppose just I was picking up on some of the comments yesterday in terms of dominance, and I was surprised to see that didn't seem to be a factor to get in relation to this, given the close proximity to some of the homes in Birch Hill. But Maggie, I appreciate in terms of your report, you stated that there isn't any clear policy direction and that relates to petrol filling stations, and under the Derry Area Plan, COM3 does state that retail is normally acceptable where there's a clear deficiency in provision. Does that same policy transfer the petrol filling stations? Because it's very hard to demonstrate how there would be a clear deficiency in provisions, given the comments that have been highlighted by Councillor Mooney and from Councillor McKinney, because there's certainly adequate petrol provisions right across the waterside. There's maybe an argument that there's no clear deficiency in provision of retail either in the locality, but I accept that there's a previous outline permission. But I just can't understand clearly, or I wouldn't mind a wee bit more rationale around how COM3 is applicable in terms of this application. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Yes, in terms of the application, there's multiple elements in terms of the retail offer proposed from the application side, and I hear the issues in relation to the petrol filling station element and the canopy and that part of it. Now, we did assess the local centre element in terms of the retail floor space, which is the primary retail consideration, and that's where COM3 draws significance. So in terms of deficiency, we're looking at retail deficiency. I suppose the petrol filling station, in terms of retail policy and the overarching policy, SBPS, would be seen as getting an ancillary element, an ancillary offer within a retail proposal. And I suppose if you look at the floor space that's proposed, it's for Class 1 retail primarily, with some proposals for hot food as well. So look, it's a part of the overall consideration within the SPPS. But in terms of the retail offer in the local centre, that's where we were looking at in terms of deficiency, and not primarily whether there's petrol pumps provided or not. It's whether the local centre as a whole as an offer, is there a deficiency in terms of the retail floor space.
Okay. Any other questions? I've got a question for you because I'm a wee bit confused about something, but I'm going to let others come in first. Go ahead, Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Maggie, for your very detailed paper. Just there's one point I was looking at here is it touches on the question of overtrading on page 22 of the bundle as it is now. It's it says here, it's kind of sort of, I'm not sure what it means. It says if you've and it's the third paragraph down. I think the applicant claims that the centre is overtrading. You then say, whilst officers are not in a position to confirm the veracity of this position, you then go on to make an assessment, and then you conclude by saying it's reasonable to conclude that there is a deficiency. Based on the line, whilst officers are not in a position to confirm the veracity of the position, i.e. the overtrading aspect from the agent, how did you arrive at that conclusion? Was it a subjective conclusion on your own, or was it from your own knowledge of the area, or was it from documents that you know yourself? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think I referred in the report as we're saying is that we can't corroborate the actual technical information submitted by the applicant in terms of figures. You know, we haven't commissioned a retail impact assessment as officers. What I do say in the report is that no evidence to the contrary has been provided to say that the information provided is wrong. Now, I think in my report, the width I'm given in terms of deficiency is primarily based on the emergent residential element of the area and the growth of the area in terms of H22 and H21. And you know, correct me if I'm wrong in my report, but that's where my emphasis is on the growth of the residential area rather than relying primarily on the retail figures submitted by the applicant.
Based on that, I mean, would that lead you to conclude that there is overtrading, or I mean, you know, without the lack of evidence or any corroboration, could you substantially confirm that there is overtrading based on that, based on those assumptions that you put forward?
Yep. Well, what I'm saying in the report is that I can't confirm that. No, so I haven't given that significant width. The significant width that I've given in terms of deficiency relates to the emergence and the growth of the residential character and the need that growing area would require in terms of a retail offer, and also the width given to the plan and history, where we had an outline application which related to 222 houses and took account of another 172. And under PPS 7, it was assessed and accepted that a residential neighbourhood centre will be acceptable, which is in excess of what's been proposed in this application. So I think that's, in my report, that's where my width is coming, and I haven't put the width on the retail evidence submitted by the applicant because I couldn't confirm that.
Okay, Councillor Mooney. Anybody any other questions? Okay. Just to clear something up for me, for my benefit, and probably actually probably be a benefit to everybody else as well. So I'm looking at the part of the report here, which deals with the original concept plan, which I think you did say in the report here was for a mixed-use retail area, but then further under the report, this is in relation to H22 and its totality, I think, Malachy. But then on subsequent reserve matters, the application did not include an application site for that mixed-use retail. So my question is there an extant planning approval on this site for anything at this point? I just can't seem to work that out through the report.
Yes, that's a good question. In terms of the outline approval, yes, there was an element. The concept plan was approved, which contained a mixed-use retail area, as I stated before, and it was conditioned under that outline approval. The reserve matters application didn't include this area within the red line, so it wasn't implemented as part of the reserve matters. So it is our view that no, that isn't extent, that part of it, but it is a material planning consideration. It is a plan history where the retail element has been accepted in recent history by this council. And I would agree with the applicant that planning policy has not changed, or the character of the area has not changed in the intervening period. So hopefully that answers your question.
Does answer my question. Thanks for that, Malachy. Councillor Mooney, again, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair, is my last question. Malachy, since 2016, could you confirm or could you possibly answer the question, given the development that has occurred since 2016 in and around that area, do you think that the provision that currently exists is adequate to share the provision at the moment?
Well, our assessment is that, that approval, was considered in 2016. So what you see on the ground was part of the consideration for the need in 2016. Our view that the circumstances haven't changed since then. I suppose the choreography issue here is that the dwellings have been built first. The application, the owners of a site did not decide to take up the retail element within the reserve matters application. So essentially nothing's changed in terms of why it was needed in 2016 to why it would not be needed now. And with the bear in mind that there's still potential for another 172 houses within H22, which has not been developed out.
Okay. So in effect, what you're saying is that the principle has been established that there would be a requirement given the new developments in and around this site and the potential for further development close to this site as well. That's effectively what you're saying, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Members, any other questions? So, Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Chair. I have a couple of questions for the officer, and thanks for the reports. I suppose given the focus of the conversation and indeed the report to the committee focused so heavily on the fact this is a residential area, residential in nature area, I'm wondering why there seems to be a lack of control or oversight within the assessment of the application in terms of that residential nature. And I'm talking specifically around things like authorising deliveries between 7:30 a.m. to 2300 hours Monday through Sunday. That doesn't seem to be overly reflective of a consideration of a residential area in my mind. There's no controls as far as I can see in terms of signage. And given what the applicants have said, or the applicant's agent has said in relation to the fuel, in response to the questions around the petrol filling station aspect of this development, and the fact that they foresee that the fuel tank and the petrol station element will be probably dismantled in a fairly short period of time, and I'm talking, I don't know whether they're talking about 10 or 15 years, but as the transition to electric vehicles takes place, I'm wondering why there doesn't seem to be any controls either on the dismantling of those fuel tanks, given what has been reported to the committee in terms of the site's hydrological links to the river. So those are the three questions, Chair.
You, Councillor Kelly. Malachy.
I suppose in relation to the first question, as I say, we've consulted Environmental Health Department and who have responsibility for statutory noise complaints and also responsibility for advising the planning authority in relation to noise and on plan applications. They've recommended those conditions Now, I've accepted those as an officer from the report. I suppose it's within the gift of the committee if they do not believe that they're stringent enough to change those, if they feel that a more stringent conditions needed, given the character of the area. Like, no, that's fine. But I suppose those would be normal operating hours for retail developments within urban areas, I imagine. In relation to the second element, and it's only coming to officers' attention the potential for the petrol tanks to be removed. So this is new information to our mind. That no, we have consulted shared environmental services in terms of hydrological links, and are satisfied that there's appropriate conditions and mitigation measures that can be applied that will avoid any pollution linkages into that. So we're fairly satisfied we're meeting our proposal as it stands with in terms of having a petrol filling tank. Obviously, it would be an improvement not to have that down the road, but we have to assess what's before us. And in terms of, I can't remember the third question was there, sorry, but signage, well, in terms of signage, no, there'll be a separate requirement under advertisement consent for signage. Wouldn't be dealt with under a full plan application, and would be assessed under separate plan policy under PPS 17.
Okay with that, Councillor Kelly?
Chair, could I just come in just as further
I
clarification?
think Councillor Kelly's all right. So, yeah, go ahead, Suzanne. Yeah.
Yeah, just in terms of what Malachi was saying about the, removing the tanks on down the line, if that was to be an issue, then we could add a further condition, just that, details are provided to council to be agreed in terms of the removal or the decommission of the tanks. That wouldn't be a problem in terms of adding a further condition. Thanks.
You, Suzanne. Members, any other further questions? No? Okay. Right. Well, we do have a recommendation in front of us here, members. The recommendation is to approve. And so I'll pass it back to the committee. Councillor Gallagher, you did mention that you would have a proposal. So if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I propose to go with a recommendation.
I'd second that. Best one.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Alderman Breslin. So members, the recommendation here in front of the committee is for approval. It's been proposed by Councillor Gallagher. It's been seconded by Alderman Breslin. And so now we'll put that to the vote. I'll ask the head of planning to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair. Members, we're taking a vote on item 4, and the proposal is to accept the officer's recommendation. Alderman Alan Breslin.
For.
Okay. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
For, Mara.
Okay. Alderman Drew Thompson.
For, Mara.
Thank you. Councillor Jason Barr.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr.
For.
Thank you. Councillor John Boyle.
Against.
Thank you.
Record that. No, I'm against.
Councillor Andrew Dobbins isn't here. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
For.
Okay. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
Against.
Okay. Councillor Dan Kelly.
Against, Maura.
Councillor Dan Kelly.
Against, Maura.
Okay. Councillor Patricia Logue declared an interest. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Not here. Councillor Philip McKinney. Can't vote. He was on late. Councillor Sean Mooney.
Against.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. Thank you to the proposer. Thank you to the seconder. Members, the result of that vote is that there are 6 members for, the application and 4 members against the application. So the application is now approved. Thank you. And I thank Patrick McShane for coming in and presenting on behalf of not only himself, no doubt, a number of neighbours, and also David Stephen, Harry McConnell, Brendan Carey, Mark Adrian, and Simon Moon as well for joining the meeting. And can I also wish the applicants well? Can I just make one further observation before you do depart, gentlemen? And it is in relation to a question asked by Councillor Jackson, which I thought was very germane to the conversation as well. I always like, and I think most of us would like to see that when developers are bringing proposals, that they should try harder to consult with local communities. I think perhaps in this case, had you engaged in that sort of a process, you may well have received much more in the way of support from the community that currently lives in and around the development. However, as I said, I wish you well, and maybe that's just one for the future going forward. So, members, I'm going to propose we take a short 10-minute break now at this point in the meeting, and we come back to the meeting at 4 o'clock. Okay. Okay, members, thank you. And again, thanks to all those online for your patience. Made sense to have a break at that point in the meeting. So we have one further item for decision today in front of you, members. It's LA 11 2021 00170. Recommendation is for a refusal. We do have some speakers in relation to this as well. But we do also have some late items for you to consider. I think maybe 5 minutes would be enough for the level of late items that we have on that. So if you just want to take 5 minutes now at this point, and then we'll get to the report, which Rosie's going to do. Okay.
Chair, Patricia Logue here.
Sorry, Patricia, go ahead.
No, just to let you know, I've joined the meeting now. You okay?
That's fine, Patricia. Thanks for letting us know. We were conscious of that anyway. We were waiting for you, so
Okay.
you're very welcome back. Okay,
you.
so we'll take 5 minutes, Patricia. We'll take 5 minutes, everybody. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, members. If you're all good to go, I'm good to go. Okay, members, LA 11 2021 0017/O. Rosie, you're going to present the report, so go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Item 6 is application reference LA 11 2021 0017/O, and this is a proposed residential development on land south and west of numbers 55 and 57 Gulf Road, Killaloe, with a recommendation to refuse. And there are also more than 5 objections, members. So this is the site location map, and it shows that the site lies within the settlement development limits of Killaloe, which is designated a small settlement in the Derry Area Plan. It's characterised by terraced dwellings on Gulf Road. There's a small cul-de-sac here at there's a small cul-de-sac here at Lettermire. Okay. At Lettermire Mews, and then there's detached dwellings here, single-storey dwellings beside the site, and a story and a half dwelling further to the north. And then to the south of the site, there's a playing field and play park, and further south again is the wastewater treatment works. This wee slide just shows the appearance of the area prior to the A6 works that are now underway. And there is land take across, you can just see it from this side. This is one of the officers' photographs taken on site in August. And there's a land take across the front of the site. It's just a view into the site with number 55. And then just further south there, looking into the site in here. So as I said, we received a number of objections. There were 20 objections from 17 addresses. And these slides just summarise the objections received. Members, they're set out in detail in the report before you, and I'm happy to take any questions in respect of those at the end of the presentation. There's planning history on the site. Under A 2007-1139F, there was a proposed housing development of 19 units proposed on the site. That site took in effectively the application site, which is here, and the adjacent curtilages of numbers 55 and 57, and that was granted approval in 2009. And then more recently, under LA 11 2020 00950, an outline application for 13 dwellings was refused permission under the delegated authority. Officers had just the reasons for refusal are summarised down here on the right-hand side. And officers, in respect of those issues, officers had requested submission of information on 3 separate occasions, but no submission was made. So for these reasons, then the application was refused under delegated authority. So this then is the proposal that is currently before us. Now the starting point for any development for residential housing is the submission of a design concept statement, and this is required under policy QD2 of PPS 7, and it's required to show how the developer will deliver a quality residential development on any particular site. And this is the design concept statement then that has been submitted with the application. Now, it's been subject to a number of revisions to address roads issues primarily. This concept statement shows or indicates the provision of 9 dwellings on the site. It's officers' opinion that the concept plan is unacceptable as it doesn't demonstrate that 9 dwellings can be accommodated whilst providing a quality residential layout which respects the character and the setting of the settlement of Killaloe and ensures that the residential amenity standards can be achieved. In officers' opinion, the layout provided demonstrates that a quality residential environment is not achieved for 9 dwellings on site. For the following reasons: the private amenity space doesn't meet the standards set out in Creating Places. DFI Roads have indicated on several occasions in their consultation responses that once the site is designed to Creating Places standards, that there'll be an impact on the layout for the site, which may reduce the number of dwellings, the parking and the amenity space achievable. There's been no details of the proposed landscaping or boundary treatments to be provided. And now, whilst it's sparse, there is vegetation around and about the site, but it's not clearly indicated on the plan. There is an annotation here at the bottom about the retention of mature vegetation, but that sits outside the application site, so, and it appears to be anyway within the curtilage of number 55, so it would need to be given particular consideration as it falls outside the ownership of the applicant. Now, officers would wish to stress, members, that whilst we've recommended refusal, housing on this site would be acceptable in principle. And it's because of this that we afforded the opportunity for the agent to address or demonstrate how the layout can achieve 9 dwellings and provide a quality residential environment. The agent considers that, or is aware that if at reserve matter stage, that design into the site to create and places standards means that 9 dwellings can't be achieved, that he would be prepared to drop houses on the site. Where that would leave us with the current application is that we don't have a design concept statement that indicates a satisfactory layout that meets acceptable quality standards. So we effectively have no concept plan that we could agree at this stage and take forward and form the basis for a quality scheme at reserve matter stage. So officers consider that policy QD2 is not complied with. In respect of policy QD1, this policy sets out that it sets out a number of criteria and states that the design and layout should be based on an overall design concept statement that draws upon the positive aspects of the character and appearance of the surrounding area. So in terms of layout, as the number of dwellings has been specified on the concept plan, officers consider that it should be demonstrated that the number of dwellings is achievable and can be delivered at reserve matter stage, whilst providing a quality residential environment, but we're not satisfied that the layout and the number of dwellings is appropriate to the site. In respect of private amenity space, Creating Places recommends that for family-sized homes, usually 3-bedroom homes, that you're providing a garden area of around 70 square metres or larger. Now, it is an outline application, so the number of the size of the dwellings isn't specified as such. And we also acknowledge that Creating Places is guidance and doesn't provide rigid standards, but the guidance does provide a baseline for what you would hope to achieve in a quality residential environment. So for 6 of the 9 dwellings proposed, the garden area is around 41 to 49 square metres. Now, it is adjacent to an area of open space, but officers consider that for family-sized dwellings, the open space provision is significantly below the suggested standard of 70 square metres. So this would suggest that the site may well be overdeveloped. In terms of landscaping, policy requires proposals to take account of existing trees and hedges to be retained and to provide appropriate landscaping as an integral part of the design. Now, as I said, there is an annotation on the plan stating that mature vegetation will be retained, but we just need a more assurance of that, given that this vegetation lies outside the site boundaries within number 55. There's also vegetation shown from our site visit to be along here, albeit it's sparse. It should be indicated on the concept plan. It's also a requirement under policy to provide new landscaping. And there's just the section in the area plan, section 16.48, that specifically relates to Killaloe, advises a requirement for substantial landscaping, as the rear boundary of the site here is on the settlement development limits, just for integration into the rural area. But the design concept doesn't show any new landscaping. Now, the agent has suggested a condition could be applied requiring landscaping, and whilst conditions can be imposed, indicative landscaping should be shown on the concept plan to ensure it can be delivered at reserve matter stage. I just go on to the next slide here. In the course of processing the application, the agent references the previous approval on site and considers that the current proposal for 9 dwellings to be acceptable, given that 11 dwellings were approved on the corresponding area on the approved plan under A 2007-1139F, which is the area outlined in red there on that plan. That corresponds to the current application site. Officers consider, however, that the context for the earlier approval, the 2007 approval that is different to the current approval in that it incorporated a larger site, taking in numbers 55 and 57. Now, this allowed then for the provision of an area of open space, more vehicular circulation within the site, and the dwellings, I suppose, they faced each other in 2 rows, whereas what's proposed now is 2 rows of dwellings. Now they face into the curtilage and the gable of number 55. So it's just our consideration that in doing this, it's at odds with the character and the established pattern of development in Killaloe. The agent considers that the earlier approval, the 2007 approval, sets a precedent for approving the current scheme. Now, whilst it is a material consideration, since that scheme was approved, PPS 7 addendum regarding safeguarding the character of established residential areas was introduced. And the purpose of the addendum was to reinforce existing policy on housing in PPS 7 by introducing its additional provisions to protect areas of established residential character, and consideration of density was one of those provisions. So 9 dwellings, as I say, have been indicated on the plan, but officers consider that it hasn't been demonstrated that that density would result in the delivery of a quality residential environment. The introduction of PPS 7 since the 2007 approval was granted is a material consideration in respect of the current application, and so it's considered the previous approval doesn't set a precedent. It's also noted that in this, the 2007 approval, some of the garden areas in that approval as well, you know, the garden areas, the private amenity space, didn't meet the space recommendation set out in Creating Places. So it's another reason we wouldn't feel that with the introduction of PPS 7 that this, whilst it's a material consideration, would carry necessarily determinant weight. The vehicular access is off Gulf Road into the site, and DFI Roads have provided conditions regarding the visibility displays. And I think members will note from the late item that's provided, there was significant engagement with DFI Roads during the processing of the application. As the scheme when it was initially submitted was considered to conflict with the vesting for the A6, and the visibility displays accessing the application site weren't clearly shown. So after a number of amendments to the scheme, this is the one on the right-hand side here now is the one that Roads considered demonstrated that adequate visibility can be achieved into the site, and this third party had to be notified as well, and notice served on them. So Roads Service now no longer offer any objection to the proposal and have provided conditions. Within the site, 14 parking spaces are indicated for the 9 dwellings. Now, based on parking standards where we've considered these may be 3-bedroom houses, there would be a requirement for 16 parking spaces. So, albeit it's only a shortfall of 2 and it is an outline application, that shortfall of 2 would, it wouldn't be considered to be acceptable in this rural area. And again, DFI Roads have pointed out that delivering the site to Creating Places standards may mean that there's a further reduction in the parking provision. In the comment that Roads make about that designing the site to Creating Places standards at reserve matter stage may impact on the layout and the number of dwellings. The site has to be to adoptable standard given that it's 9 dwellings, and this is required in the interests of road safety. So that's part of the reason that there's concern about what the implications then would be for the space required to achieve manoeuvring and parking within the site and the implications then for the layout. So officers have engaged with the agent and offered the opportunity to demonstrate that these dwellings would be acceptable. And the agent advised that he's satisfied that it is acceptable, and he asked that the application be brought then before members at the earliest opportunity, which we've now done. There's a few other issues just with natural heritage. We've carried out consultation with SCS, and there's no impact on any European site. The biodiversity checklist was submitted, and it indicates there's no protected habitat or species on site, and officers would concur with that after a site visit. There have been objections regarding natural heritage, but we're satisfied there's no water courses on the site or peat on the site either, so we don't think there's any impact on natural, protected species or habitats. The site is close to Killaloe wastewater treatment works, but you'll note from the report that there's no, NI Water have carried out an odour assessment on this, and they've no concerns regarding the impact for future residents on the site. And in respect of any potential flood risk, which was also raised by the objectors, we've consulted DFI Rivers, and they have suggested a condition regarding a future more detailed drainage design for the site. So members, officers would reiterate that housing is acceptable in principle on the site, but is set out before you in the report. It hasn't been demonstrated that the 9 dwellings can be accommodated in a way that delivers a quality residential environment, and refusal is recommended for the following reasons, and they are also detailed in the report before members. Thank you.
You, Rosie. Thanks for presenting the report again. Detailed and yet concise at the same time, so much appreciated. Members, we do now have on the line the agent on behalf of the applicant. And so again, just to welcome to the meeting, Matt Kennedy. Matt, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us. And can I just also thank you for your patience and relating in relation to the length of time that you have waited through yesterday and today. As you understand, Matt, we have no way of knowing what kind of time frame we're working with. And I know that you were trying to find out yesterday when we might finish the meeting. I didn't know at that point because it was quite early in the meeting, so apologies for that. So we have Matt on, members. You know the drill, Matt, so I'll pass it over to you.
Yes, Chair. Can you hear me?
Not great at the minute. If you could try and work on that.
Okay, just give me a second here. That up there, but yeah. How's that, Chair?
That's perfect, Matt. Go ahead.
Okay. Chairman, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to address the Planning Committee in this planning application. Councillors will now be aware from the further information that there are fundamental differences in the interpretation and scope of outline planning applications between the planning department and ourselves and in relation to the process in this application. However, I do not believe the Planning Committee is the proper remit and or forum to discuss or debate these issues. Therefore, I'll not be asking the Planning Committee on this occasion to overturn this decision. It's our intention to take this planning application to the Planning Appeals Commission, where the planning merits of each of these 8 refusal reasons will be determined. Thank you for hearing me in this application. This concludes my presentation to the committee.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And the committee will note that. However, it's on our desks in front of us. And so not wishing to prejudge what this committee might decide upon. Clearly, whatever you feel it might be necessary in the future, that's entirely up to yourself. But the application for the outline permission is in front of the committee today, and we are going to proceed with it. So members, I'm going to open it up for questions because you can now ask Mr. Kennedy questions should you so wish. And of course, it's up to Mr. Kennedy whether he wishes to answer those questions. Okay, so over to you, members. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to Matt for coming to the committee. And I suppose the only question that I've got in really is why is it not appropriate for us as a planning committee to discuss the merits of the application?
Thanks, Councillor Jackson. Matt, do you feel that you wish to answer that question now? Help yourself.
Chair, I'm in a position here where I have 8 reasons for refusal against me. I have 5 minutes to try and run through them. I really don't have the time to sort of deal with each one of those in the time delivered. And to be honest with you, there's so many reasons for refusal here, and they raise issues about the interpretation and the scope of planning applications and outline planning applications in particular, which I don't think is really the remit or a forum at the planning committee to actually get into. I think this application would be better discussed and better determined at the Planning Appeals Commission, where a detailed look can be put and be each reason for refusal can be looked at in detail and gone through in detail and considered in detail. And they'll make a determination then by an independent body in terms of whether the refusal reasons can be sustained or not. So I don't mean any disrespect to the planning committee. I come in front of the planning committee on a regular basis. I don't want to offend anybody on the planning committee, but I do feel that this planning application has been badly treated by the planning department, and my client wants to exercise his right to go to the Planning Appeals Commission and see what the Planning Appeals Commission have to determine on.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I don't think anybody's in any way offended by your approach to this. Certainly not. I don't see anybody indicating to me that they're offended anyway. Again, that's entirely over to yourself. The application is in front of us today. Councillor Gallagher, did you want to come in? Did you indicate? You don't have to. I'm not sure if you wanted to.
If you invite me in,
go ahead. Take a chat. Take your.
I'd be quite happy to grant him his wish.
Okay, right. I don't think there was a question there, Matt. Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. Members, if there are no further questions for Matt, I'll proceed on with the next part of the journey, so to speak. Matt, thanks for coming along and explaining your position to us. You're welcome to stay, of course. Members, any questions for Rosie at this point?
Chair.
Who might that be?
Councillor McKinney, Chair.
Councillor McKinney, go ahead.
Rosie, can I ask you when you actually visited the site with regards to the play park? You stated there's a play park there.
Just clarify. The site location map here just shows a playing field, and I'll show you the next wee slide there. That is prior to any works taking place for the A6. There was a small play area here. Can you see that, Councillor?
Yeah, that's no longer there, Rosie.
That's right, it's not.
The A6 comes through there as a slip road.
That's right, it does,
Just
yeah.
to clarify that, because you did mention there was a play park there at
I
present.
think, sorry. It was only to show the context of the site prior to the A6 roadworks taking place. I hope I said that in the presentation, that the A6 roadworks, they definitely have impacted on Killaloe at that point at the minute.
Yeah, I agree
That's
there.
why
The
the
half.
roadworks are going on.
Just another question on the sewage. Seems to keep cropping up there. What is the problem there? Is there no main sewage? Is it just all done by tanks?
No, there is main sewage in Killaloe. The only issue that we were raising there was the proximity to the wastewater treatment works in respect of disamenity, I suppose, in respect of odour. But NI Water are satisfied that that doesn't occur for the future residents. There's actually a lot of houses there in Killaloe that are closer to the wastewater treatment works than the application site, so we don't think that's an issue.
Okay, Councillor McKinney.
Yeah, happy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney. Thank you, Rosie. So they ripped up the children's play area at Butler Road. There you go. Anyway, any other questions for Rosie? No questions for Rosie. Okay, members. Well, in front of you, you have a recommendation from officers. A recommendation for this application is a refusal. So again, over to yourselves.
Chair, happy to propose the recommendation.
Proposed by Councillor Gallagher. Is there a seconder?
Happy to second Councillor Jason Barr.
Councillor Jason Barr, seconded by Councillor Jason Barr. Recommendation to refuse, proposed by Councillor Gallagher, seconded by Councillor Jason Barr. Members, we're going to do the vote. So I'll ask Head of Planning to run us through the vote. Thank you. Go ahead, Mark.
So, sorry, Chair, can I just get confirmation what we're voting on here? Is it to agree with the officer?
Yes, yes. Basically, the proposal here, Councillor McKinney, is for a refusal. The officer recommendation is for a refusal, and Councillor Gallagher is proposing that we accept that recommendation, and Councillor Barr is seconding the proposal to accept that recommendation to refuse.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so Maura, if you want to take us through the vote.
Item 6, members to accept officer's recommendation to refuse. Alderman Alan Breslin.
For.
Okay. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
For, Maura.
Okay. Alderman Drew Thompson.
For, Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Jason Barr.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr.
For.
Thank you. Councillor John Boyle.
For.
Okay. Councillor Dobbins isn't here. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Kelly.
For, Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Patricia Logue.
For.
Thank you. Kieran's not here. Councillor Philip McKinney.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Sean Mooney.
For.
Okay, that's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, members, thank you very much. That's a unanimous vote to accept the officer recommendation to refuse. Matt, thanks for hanging on and thanks for coming along today. Wish you well going forward. Okay. Okay, members, just give me a wee second that we get to the next part of our agenda here. Next item on the agenda, members, open for decision. Item number 8, which is the confirmation of a TPO tree preservation order at 4 Carrickeel Drive, Maydown. Prontius is online, so Prontius, go ahead.
Good afternoon, members. The purpose of today's report is to seek members' consideration and agreement to confirm a provisional tree preservation order on land at 4 Carrickeel Drive in Maydown. Members, Section 2 of this report before you sets out the background to TPOs generally and then goes on to look at this site specifically. In summary, a TPO is assessed against the established TPO criteria. In summary, they are that firstly, does the trees, whether the trees are of particular public amenity value, and secondly, whether they are at risk. In this particular case, the site in question is situated immediately northeast of the settlement of Maydown, and members will see within the pack there's two aerial photographs which show the context and the location of the tree in question. This is an area of existing industry in the Dairy Area Plan. There's predominantly industrial buildings and development around it, but there's also an area of open grass area immediately beside it, and the residential part of Maydown, the Templeton Park area. It lies immediately to the southwest on the opposite side of Maydown Road. Members will see from the aerial photograph that there's a fairly modest-sized office supplies building on this site, a fairly large open grassed area, and at the southern southeast section, southwest, there stands a single large mature oak tree, and it is this oak tree which is the subject of this TPO. A TPO request was received in April 2022, and in accordance with the normal practice, the Council's planning PTO team or TPO team undertook a site visit and TPO assessment. Officers concluded at that stage that this was a fine, prominent oak tree and indeed of significant public amenity value and at immediate risk. Therefore, a provisional TPO was served on the site on the 30th of June 2022, in accordance with the procedures. This provisional TPO is therefore due to be confirmed or allowed to lapse within 6 months of that date, i.e. by the 30th of December 2022. In line with the normal TPO making procedures, members, the Council proceeded to commission an independent arboriculturalist tree survey. This report has been attached as appendix to this report, and it's been forwarded to you in the past few days. That report includes a summary of the health and condition survey and a map and a photograph of the tree in question. As part of the process of serving the provisional TPO, notification letters were issued to the owners and interested parties, and however, no comments or objections were received within the specified 28-day period. Members have before them the TPO survey report. It's fairly short. This report confirms that this is a sessile oak, which is mature. It's considerably old. It's probably over 120 years old. It's 12 metres in height. It's also almost 1 metre in diameter trunk, and it's a radius of over 10 metres. The tree is found to be in generally healthy condition, and the recommendation is that it's fine and no remedial works are recommended. Therefore, as per the officer's initial assessment, members, this has been found to be a fine specimen oak tree. It's in healthy condition. It's of significant public amenity value. It has strong individual impact. It's got a wider impact. The tree is considered to be under threat, and therefore this tree meets the legislation and criteria for continued protection under a tree preservation order. So its confirmation without any modifications is considered to be appropriate. Therefore, members, the recommendation is that the provisional TPO should be confirmed as per the tree survey report. Happy to take any questions, members.
Thank you, Prentice. Does anybody have any questions for Prentice? If not, then I'll take a proposal. That is down for decision. Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard Prentice and I've read the papers and happy to propose the recommendation put forward. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Gallagher. Thank you. Councillor Mooney, thank you, Councillor Gallagher. So the proposal there, members in front of you, is to support the officer recommendation in relation to the tree preservation order. And of course, you've all had a chance to look at the survey reports as well. So if I don't hear anybody disagreeing with that position, then we will work on the assumption that this is a unanimously agreed position. Okay, Prentice, thank you very much. We'll move it forward from here. Thanks, Prentice. I do agree. It's actually quite a beautiful tree. Well worth looking after. Absolutely. Okay, members, next items on the agenda are open for your information. That's item 9, planning appeals update. Item 10, correspondence update from DFI. Maura does want to address that with you. And then finally, item 11, which is the list of decisions issued. So if nobody has any queries around
Chair, item 9, Chair.
Sorry, Keith.
Item 9, sorry, just very briefly. There's two new there's an application in there, a new one on that list. Killymat Road out at Cullion. I'm just seeking clarification just off the top of my own head. Isn't that the one with the bus shelter? Yeah, that's all right. It's focal point. That's one. The other aspect, just in regards to the appeal and regard which has been successful for the applicant in regards to the dairy herd. Just seeking there, you know, what's the impact now at the tail end now for this man? Has he got his permissions? Or I'm just going to say he doesn't require the environmental impact assessment. And it's just, I see in that, you know, there was a point at the start of it there, we were deeming this was a significant or intensive farming. But, you know, it was only looking at 120 cows. You know, that's not much below the average dairy herd that's here. You know, it's just over the 100. So it's not the same scale as there are milking a couple of hundred cows. You know, you're only chatting about 120 unit. And again, just I'm kind of mindful there, it's been kicking on a wee bit and you have to go through the process. But the cost involved today to put that up compared to the cost involved 2 years ago would have been substantial. And I'm just wondering why we had that, or was there any particular reason why we pushed for the EIA on it? Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Kerrigan. Well, we considered it's really to do the issue with the ammonia deposition, okay? And there is, so the PAC have now said, look, it's not EIA development, so we will now proceed to determine the application. There are obviously concerns that on the site in terms of, you know, the background levels, which we will have to reconsult shared environmental services with. In terms of the position of is it intensive or not, it would fall, accept what you're saying, but it would fall within DAERA's guidance for intensive livestock installation. I would also point out to members that the hearing was in September 2021. So we did the EIA decision months before that, and we didn't get the PAC decision the 19th of October this year. So I totally accept, yeah, there's been a delay in terms of decision making. We're after today, so once obviously there's no issues raised today with the finding from the PAC, we'll move on now and get back in negotiation with the agents and hopefully conclude the application as early as we can.
One follow-up, is it just going to, is that, it's not site specific, it's going to be the case that anyone that's coming in with effectively over 100 cows for a dairy unit is going to be kind of under the same implication with the planning committee? Are we going to be, or it's now the case that that's been ruled against, that anyone else coming in with a similar sized application won't be pushed for? I'm just seeking clarification on that.
It depends on where the site is located. So if you're within so many kilometres of ASSI or an SIC and there's issues, I mean, obviously intensive agriculture, ammonia deposition is a huge issue. So it really depends where you're located. It does depend on the number of animals and obviously that also depends on any existing operation. So it's not one rule that we'll be doing that for all of them, no. And we'll obviously be taking cognizance of what the PAC are saying as part of the finding as well.
So basically a case-by-case basis. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? Councillor Kelly on the same issue. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. It is on the same issue, and well, my question is really in relation to the Commission's report, and in two aspects. And just picking up on what Keith was raising there, the appeal was allowed on the grounds that the site was within the Sperrin AONB. That was what's cited at 5.4 of the Commissioner's report as the reason why the hearing had to go ahead, because it met that criteria. But having found that that was the criteria that was met, at no point then in the rest of the Commission's report for the whole rest of those pages is the Sperrin AONB mentioned again. And I found that just very odd. And it's probably, I've read it a couple of times trying to make sense of it. But I found it very strange that, having found the criteria for having the hearing was because the site was within the Sperrin AONB, that at no point then subsequent to that did the Commissioner address the issue of the Sperrin AONB. And I'm probably missing something, and I would, maybe not today, but I would appreciate it sometime if an officer could go back and explain to me what it is I'm missing, because I found that report just odd from the Commission. That's it, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly, do you want to help Councillor Kelly through that one?
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Kelly. So when we're screening applications under the Planning Environmental Impact Assessment regulations, there are thresholds. Okay, so if it's over 500 square metres for intensive livestock, we have to screen it. But also, if it's intensive livestock in the AONB, we have to screen it no matter what size it is, because the AONB is considered a sensitive area as part of the regulations. So the issue with the AOE is really only in terms of the fact that it was required to be screened in the first place. There's no other, there are no other implications in terms of the impact of the development on the AONB in terms of the environmental assessment. So it's really to do with the reason for it being screened in the first place.
Okay. Okay, Dan.
Yeah, that's useful. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kelly. Thank you, Suzanne. Anybody else? Any other questions for Suzanne? No? Okay, right. The correspondence update from DFA Planning. It's probably not news to you, but anyway, Maura, you wanted to run us through that? That you did say you wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Members, just very briefly, you'll recall we had written on the 22nd of May and then the 14th of September, asking DFA for an update on 5 applications that were on hold in terms of Article 17. And then on the 6th of October, we did receive correspondence regarding 4 of those cases. I have highlighted here in your report each of the cases, and the first 2 cases in regard to housing at Elyck Road, and the second one, which is housing again in the Ballinagorty area. Both those applications, members, in terms of update, have now been issued on the 14th of October. And the detail there is within the report. Item number 3 relates to the public greenway. And that application, we had to consider whether or not we would require a further PDH. And we've taken advice on it and reconsidered our own recent legal advice on it, and are content that that is not required. So that application will issue shortly. The 4th application there, we've heard yesterday, it's listed in Planning Committee. So we've got direction on that now in terms of a way forward. And in regards to the final application, members, we're still awaiting response in regard to the clock tower application, which members will be aware of. And we've had nothing back on that. However, just by way of update, we've had a recent complaint in regard to that case, which we've already sent to DFI, who are obviously holding the application, and officers have gone out on site just to check exactly what the issue was on site that and the individual was raising. So I just thought it was important to update members on that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, members, anybody any comments they wish to make in relation to that, or just happy enough to note that? Okay. So noted, Maura. Thank you very much. Members, could I get a proposer to take us into confidential business? Councillor Mooney, seconded. Councillor Gallagher, thank you. We'll just give it a minute.